Just heard from Dick Vermeil, one of the new 8 members of the Pro Football Hall of Fame. It was a beautiful ceremony this weekend. Kurt Warner was there, my friend and colleague from NFL Network. It's been a long weekend. So excited to have Kurt join us here on the Mercedes-Benz Vans phone line. Kurt, thanks so much for taking some time this morning.
You got it. Finally made it home from Ken. It was a great weekend, but it was a long trip home. So spent the night in Denver and finally got back home this morning. So it's good to be joining you.
Listen, Kurt, there was the Hall of Fame dinner. We'll get into that a little bit, putting the gold jacket on Dick Vermeil. What was the most, and maybe this was it, but what was the most memorable moment of the weekend for you?
And it's always a great question. Yeah, I do love the gold jacket dinner, and, you know, when guys get to kind of walk down the gauntlet of, you know, Hall of Fame players, and, you know, you just see the connections. Whether it was teammates or players that you coached or guys that you had an influence on. I mean, I think it took Coach V about 45 minutes to walk down the gauntlet because he stopped and talked to and hugged everybody because he's got some kind of connection. He's been in the game so long. But that's such a neat night because it does sink in differently for every player or every coach that gets in, and you never know when that's going to hit you. But that is just a really special, unique event. You know, that's unlike anything else, and I think it's kind of that moment for a lot of guys when it really, I'm a Hall of Famer once I slide this jacket on.
That's all. It's the first thing you get, right? You get the gold jacket, then you see the bust the next day, and eventually you get the ring. You wrote a beautiful article on NFL.com about Coach V, who's obviously meant so much to you in your career. You talked about his superpower. What was that, Kurt, and how did that make him a Hall of Famer?
Yeah, I just believe his and you know, just in that interview he was doing with Rich, you could just see, you know, his connection with people, his heart for people, and that to me was what always separated him. I was around a lot of great coaches, and not to say that those guys didn't connect with their players, but Dick had a special way of connecting with guys and making you feel like, you know, you were the most important guy in the room. I think my wife said it when we were talking about him, is that, you know, when he walks into the room, he make you feel like you're the most important and not he's the most important. And I think he was like that as a coach. You always felt like he had your best interest in mind over his, you know, winning and the success. As we know, all, you know, guys that are connected and competitive, you know, want to win and have success. But when you can feel that from your coach, that he's really, you know, doing everything he can to make you succeed, that's when you want to, you know, play for him. And that's when you want to fight for him, you know, between those lines on Sundays. And you could talk to players that, you know, he coached all the way back in high school to the, you know, last players he coached in Kansas City. And they will all tell you the same thing, that they felt the exact same connection, same way about him. He continues to stay in touch with, I mean, so many guys. It's incredible when you talk to guys that, he texted me 2 weeks ago. He texted me 3 weeks ago. He follows up and connects with people. And that, to me, was what separated him as a leader and why, you know, not just player-wise or between the lines, but why all the organizations he was a part of were better off when he left than they were when he got there, is because that infiltrated the entire organization that he was a part of.
That's such a special quality, and you could certainly see it in his speech. I mean, the amount of thank yous, the personal thank yous that he was handing out to literally everybody almost in his football life, so much so that I was like, when's he thanking Kurt? And it was way away at the end. Obviously, you've meant so much to him and his success, but you were inducted 5 years ago into the Pro Football Hall of Fame. You wrote that you still have trouble putting on your gold jacket and feeling that you belong with all that you've done. How come?
You know, I don't know why that is. But, you know, I think sometimes because of the journey that I had and the limited amount of time that I played, you know, that I think sometimes I just look at some of the guys that are on that stage and I just wonder, you know, if I belong in the same category, you know, and you could ask me, do I believe when I was between the lines that I was one of the best to ever play this game? I do. But, you know, I think a lot of people kind of wrestle with the idea of guys that don't play as long as other guys. And I love the distinction of kind of a first ballot Hall of Famer from other guys, because I do believe there's certain guys that played at another standard or had the longevity or put all that together. and have that special significance being a first ballot guy. But I don't know why. It's hard to say because, like I said, I have tremendous confidence in who I was and believe in what I accomplished and in who I was when I played. But I don't know. It just sometimes it's just kind of funky. I just want to kind of sit in the back of the room and watch all of these guys that were my heroes and guys that helped me fall in love with the game and guys that did so many great things between the lines and enjoy the moment, even though I don't really know quite how I fit in.
No, I mean, I think that's some of the qualities that make you such a special person as well, that humbleness. And I think you carry many of the qualities that Coach V has in terms of making others feel special in your interactions with them. And certainly one of the greatest stories in the history of football, story that needs to be immortalized for all time and so well deserved, Kurt. When you get all of these Hall of Famers together, I mean, we see the images, we see the speeches of the 8 guys. But what are some of the behind-the-scenes stuff that we don't see with all of you legends together?
Yeah, I think the coolest part of all of it is you've watched these guys play the game, and you can look up their stats, on the internet and all of that stuff, and you can understand, just from a simple football perspective, why they have gold jackets, why they have busts in Canton. But for me, every year, the best part is sitting down with some guys that I don't really know as people, just kind of know as players and admired as players, and getting to know who they are. And, just as you talked about when I wrote that article about Coach Vermeil, what I was saying was that as I sit and get to know all of these gold jackets, they all have a superpower. There's something underneath that gold jacket and beyond the stats and the physical ability that separates them. And when you sit down and get to know them and you sit down and have conversations with guys like Willie Lanier and Mel Blount and I mean these guys that really set the standard for guys before I even played, and you find out about their character and what drove them and who they are and the stories that go behind them getting there. That to me is always the best part. The spectacle parts of it, slipping on the gold jacket, and as you said, the speech, and and popping off the gold blanket and seeing the bust is always really, really cool. But it's those individual interactions and getting to know what really is underneath these guys, and it's why you start to see, obviously that's why this guy's wearing a gold jacket, and that's why this guy's wearing a gold jacket, because they have some unique ability that not only help them to be great, but help the people around them to be great. And I think almost to a man of those guys in the Hall of Fame, you could find something that separated them and elevated the play of the people around them, and it's why they will live forever in Canton.
That's so awesome to hear. And one thing that kind of resonated throughout every speech that I heard this weekend was faith, football, and family. Everybody talked about that, and that is what brought them to this point. Everybody was giving out all the accolades to others and who had lifted them to be there. And obviously one speech that really stood out to me was Bryant Young's. And, we all didn't expect that. And Steve Mariucci said it was the first time he saw BY get choked up. He was talking about his late son, Colby, who had passed away from cancer at age 15. And, class of 22, Colby's favorite number. What was your reaction being right there listening to Bryant Young's speech?
Well, I didn't know the story. I didn't, know all of that. And I think, talking to Mooch kind of behind the scenes, just him kind of telling me where Bryant was at that point in his career and what he had to give up, was kind of went behind the scenes and without fanfare. And so obviously extremely emotional. And I'm always in the minority is that, when I gave my speech and back when we were giving speeches, we were told to be in the 20, 25-minute range. A lot of us took 30 minutes. And I know it makes for a long day. I mean, I didn't get up on the stage until like 11:15 that night. So it made for a long day. But I love when I get to hear these guys' stories. I want to know what the struggle was and what it was like to get there and who are the people that shaped them. And, now that we have the 8.5 minutes or whatever, I don't think we get, in my opinion, I don't get enough of what I want from that. It's so much of the thank yous because you don't want to forget anybody that was instrumental. But it's moments like that from Bryant Young that always stand out and that always resonate because, again, you start to see the men behind everything else. And that, to me, is what Enshrinement Saturday is about. And what I love is I want to just sit there for however long it takes, and I want to hear everybody's story because we all have a different journey. You know, everybody makes a big deal of my journey, and it was made into a movie and all of that stuff. But all of these guys have their own journey, and they have their own story, and that, to me, is the best part, and I want everybody to be able to hear that. So I never complain when guys go long because I love to hear what makes them who they are. And that moment, like you said, it was one of those moments that gripped everybody that was watching and will stick with us. You know, of all the things we know about Bryant Young, that'll probably be the thing because this is kind of that last moment that you have as a football player to, you know, kind of set your legacy. This is the last thing you get to do in the game, so to speak. And we'll always remember that in the character that is behind that man, you know, everything from the injury that he suffered, but, you know, who he was as a father and how that defined him was such a cool, you know, moment, even though obviously it was a tragedy behind it. I think it endeared everybody to who the man was, and I'll never forget it.
No, it's truly about the stories. I'm with you there, and I agree. Don't put time limits on it. I mean, this is a day you've been working your entire life for, you know, being inducted into the Hall of Fame. The one day that, you know, as an elite athlete, you really get to reflect on what your career has been and the journey that's gotten you there. And so it was truly a beautiful day overall. Speaking of journeys, Kurt, we just started the preseason last Thursday. We are 1 month exactly from the regular season getting underway, September 8th. What quarterback are you most excited about this year?
I'm excited about all of them. I love watching all of these guys.
All 32.
I mean, I do. I love the position. I love the game, and I love and want to see all of these guys succeed. Who am I most excited about? You know, I'm really excited about the AFC West, and kind of all of them. You know, I mean, Patrick Mahomes, everybody loves to watch him. Justin Herbert has been so good. I think this is kind of that year that he's going to take them to the playoffs, and we get to see who he is. Russell Wilson back with a team that I think really fits his skill set and allows him the opportunity, you know, to maybe get back to that championship form. And then Derek Carr, a guy that I don't think has got enough respect and hasn't really put it all together. I think they've surrounded him with some great talent. It's going to give him an opportunity to showcase his skills. So, I mean, I could just look in that division. I'm excited about all those guys. Of course, you know, Josh Allen, I want to see, you know, if he takes that next step and can lead Buffalo back, you know, to a Super Bowl. So, you know, those are just a few. But I always love seeing the young guys kind of take another step, or the guys that are kind of the middle of the pack, if they get that opportunity to step and become elite. And I think we got some guys that are set up to make a little bit of a move this year.
Kurt, I am so with you on the AFC West. I am fascinated by those quarterbacks, those teams. I think all four of them could lead their team to a Super Bowl. I asked MJ Acosta-Ruiz about this. We've been talking about it on the show throughout the day. I mean, for me, I put Russell Wilson fourth out of that group. I go Patrick Mahomes. I go Justin Herbert. I go Derek Carr. And then I go Russell Wilson for this heading into the season. How do you see it? How do you rank those quarterbacks?
I mean, if I'm just looking at the quarterback as a whole, and I know what you're saying, and you know, I think eventually, you know, Justin Herbert is going to make that move and probably go ahead. But I'm going to put Russell Wilson number two. I mean, simply from the standpoint that his team always has a chance to win. He's just a winner, and he's a guy that puts his team in a position to win every time out. The other two guys in that division, Justin Herbert and Derek Carr, as good as they've been at moments, they haven't always done that. And that, to me, is what the quarterback position is about. And, you know, people can argue all they want on, you know, wins and losses not being a quarterback stat. I'm going to disagree with that. And, again, I understand the point. It is the ultimate team game. But I think the quarterback is the guy that puts you in position to be successful more than anyone else. And they're the guys that dictate in close games whether you're coming out with a victory or not, more times than not. And Russell is that guy. You are always in a game with Russell Wilson. And so because of that, I say the same thing about Patrick Mahomes. That's why those two guys go 1-2 for me. And the other guys, as talented as they are and big picture, as you say, may end up being better overall quarterbacks when it's all said and done. Just the complete skill set. You got to show me that those guys can win and play in the moment the way Russell Wilson does and make you believe the way Russell Wilson does before I let either one of them unseat him as the second best guy in that division.
And that is why, Kurt Warner, you are a Hall of Fame quarterback, a Hall of Fame analyst, and I'm just filling in for Rich Eisen today. So you sold me.
You're the Justin Herbert. You're going to just, you're taking your steps so one day you can surpass him.
I won't say it. You said it, Kurt. I appreciate you. Listen, we haven't talked about Tom Brady, and I do want to touch on him real quick. Recently turned 45 years young, and some of the stats that NFL Research, I know you get the packets, they do an awesome job. And one thing they put out last week on his birthday, Brady has more passing touchdowns in his 40s. So just from 40 till now than Troy Aikman, Jim Plunkett, Bart Starr. He's got more passing yards in his 40s than Roger Staubach, Michael Vick, Sammy Baugh. I mean, to put that, it's incredible to think about that. I know you do your study ball, your quarterback confidential. When you look at Tom Brady on film, is he still getting better?
Well, I mean, I think that's the beautiful thing about Tom Brady, and we use this word ceiling all the time, especially with guys coming out of college. Hey, this guy's got the highest ceiling. Well, to me, we don't ever know anybody's ceiling until they get there. And we don't know how far it is from where they're at to their ceiling. That, to me, is the most impressive thing about Tom Brady throughout his career, is that, every time we think he's hit his ceiling, he pushes himself to another level, and he seems to get better. The beautiful thing about Tom is, A, body-wise, he can still make all the throws. But, B, you never grow out of that big game gene, and not everybody has it. That, to me, is what's always separated Tom Brady from everybody else, is that big game gene. When you're in the moment and you need someone to play well and you need someone to make a play, there's nobody that's been better at doing that than Tom Brady. So you keep him healthy with all the stuff he does, with the way that the game has changed. And, it's amazing to watch because, again, 15 years ago, if quarterbacks hit 40, they were ancient and, it was time to retire. So to think 45 is just ridiculous. But, it's fun to watch. And he makes our league better, having him around. It's fun to talk about him every year, being the greatest of all time. But you're still believing at 45 that he could win another Super Bowl. He could get to another Super Bowl. I mean, it's unfathomable. But, every once in a while in life, one of those guys comes along. I can't even say generational. He's a couple generational because he's playing until he's 45. But those guys that are just rare and unique and can do something longer and better than everyone else. And I appreciate that we get another year to be able to witness that greatness. And we'll see if it goes beyond that.
The big game gene. I love that, Tom Brady. Richard Seymour in his Hall of Fame speech said, the Pats had a young quarterback, and they made it work. A little shot at Tom Brady there, the GOAT himself. I'm curious, who is your next quarterback coming up on Quarterback Confidential where you're going to break? I love watching these videos on YouTube.
You know what? Actually, this week I'm going to actually break down Mitch Trubisky. So I think he's going to win the job in Pittsburgh, at least to start the year. And I think a lot of us kind of forgotten who Mitch was. He had some really good moments in Chicago and then some of his struggles to see kind of where he's at this year. So this week, as I go into the season, I'm always trying to go, okay, what are the cool storylines going into the beginning of the season? So I'm going to look at Mitch Trubisky again and kind of remind everybody of who he was and, when he's at his best and the things that he struggled with. And let's see, after a year off and a year in Buffalo and a year to kind of mature, where he's at this year early on, because they got a brutal schedule. And obviously they got a young kid right behind him. But I think a lot of people were excited about, what his potential is. And I'm interested to see, what he's going to be this year in Pittsburgh with that defense and if he can, kind of resurrect his career.
All right, Kurt Warner, looking forward to seeing that. Quarterback Confidential, Study Ball. Really appreciate you taking the time to join us today on the Rich Eisen Show. I know it's been a long weekend, but your insight is the best. You're a great man, great human, great Hall of Famer, and really appreciate you.